I can't remember very many now, although there are 3 from that last incandescent summer whom I resist forgetting. They were all marching toward their own secret fates, and long before the next decade rolled around, each would escape in her own way. One would be famous, one would be married, and one would be dead. That is what I want to tell you about. The girls with their short skirts and bright eyes and big city dreams. The girls of 1929. Chapter 1. The handful of wedding guests were already assembled in the clapboard Lutheran church on Main Street, and though they had been waiting for a quarter hour, any stray passerby might have noticed a lone girl still loitering outside. It was past 4 o'clock on that sleepy Union, Ohio Sunday, and the dappled afternoon sun played on her high, fine cheekbones and on the strands of her loosely braided honey and bark-colored hair. The girl was just 18 and had graduated from Union's one-room high school 2 weeks earlier. If that passerby had bothered to ponder her eyes, which were the sweet, translucent brown of Coca-Cola in a glass, he might have recognized in them a brewing agitation. She let those eyes drift to the glaze of sun between the tree branches overhead. Her lips parted, and she let out a breath. The homemade dress she wore was of simple white cotton, and though the style was not entirely appropriate for the event, she had tried but mostly failed to sew it in the shorter, sportier fashion now worn in cities. The color marked her as the bride. Through the narrow windows she could see the guests in their pews and the tall figure of the only boy in Union who had ever paid her any attention, standing patiently at the altar. He was wearing his father's black suit, and his sand-colored hair was a little overgrown and rough around his face, which was big and pleasing, but not yet a man's. The sight of him made her agitation worse, and she drew back a little and closed her eyes. Everything had happened so quickly. She hadn't really believed there would be a wedding until that morning, when she woke up and it suddenly dawned on her that her situation was quite real. "Cordelia!" She turned at the sound of her name and saw her best friend, Letty Halbstadt, whose eyes stood out like 2 pure blue planets against the white oval of her face. Her dark hair was parted down the middle and pinned back, and her petite body was clothed in the same black dress and black tights and black shoes her father always insisted she wear. The sight of Letty reassured Cordelia some, even if her garb was a little funereal for a wedding, and she managed to almost smile. "I'm sorry it took me so long," Letty told her, smiling more broadly. Then she untucked the folded yards of mosquito netting that she'd been carrying under her arm, shook it out, and stood on her tiptoes to arrange it over the taller girl's head. "I know your aunt says you don't deserve one, but I just think it wouldn't be a wedding if the bride wasn't wearing a veil." There was a sharp rapping on the window pane, and both girls looked up to see Cordelia's Aunt Ida, her thin lips set in a hard grimace, looking down at them expectantly. Cordelia gave her aunt a curt nod and turned back to her friend. Letty handed her a bouquet of yellow wildflowers, which she must have picked on the way there, and then asked, "Are you ready?" Cordelia glanced up to make sure her aunt had returned to her seat, and then pulled the netting away from her face so that she could look directly at her friend. She swallowed hard and said, "Let's go tonight." Letty's smile fell, and her face grew pale. "Tonight? You'll never be a star if you stay here." Cordelia fixed her friend with an intense gaze. She was merely saying out loud what they both knew to be true. "The train leaves at 6:52 from the Defiance station." There was only one train a day in that part of the state that would carry you all the way to New York City, a fact Cordelia had known for years. She knew that